That's your rundown of the political landscape at the time of Jesus. It's complicated, and it's messy. Kind of like what we face today in our country. A very similar kind of situation. But one thing that they had in common with us is that it's not a whole bunch of folks wearing black hats. You watch those old westerns where the good guy wears the white hat and everybody else wears the black hat. It wasn't like that. Lots of people who love God intermingle in these stories. Lots of people who have passion for God. Lots of people who live their religious life believing that they're doing exactly what God is calling them to do. But then find themselves taking steps to try to make the will of God happen. And ultimately, they don't recognize God when they see Him. They're so convinced of what they've seen. So, in the story of the triumphal entry, we're going to play a little game here, and it's an exercise, so I need everyone to participate. I'm glad we have a few kids left. My kids are here. So I need my kids to start this part of it. And that is, have you heard the story, the Passover story, when they come into Jerusalem and the kids are waving palm branches? Have you heard it before? Okay, so can you guys just say Hosanna, Hosanna for me? Okay, a little louder.
Hosanna, Hosanna.
Okay, that's kind of like how we do it in church, right? You get the kids to come down the aisle and they have the little palm leaves and they wave them and they sing, right? That's not at all what's happening in the story. It's not at all what's happening. First of all, you have to understand that the word Hosanna is actually a Jewish word. It's two words. Hoshana. Hoshana is the word. And it actually literally translates to the words liberate us or liberty is what these people are shouting. And the palm branch that they're waving is not a kid's thing where it's like, oh, it's cute, let's run with these. It's actually a big old honkin' palm leaf cut down from the trees because it is the political symbol of their Tea Party, their religious / restore government / run the Romans out / don't tread on me flag. That's what they're waving. The palm branch that these guys are carrying in Jerusalem is their political symbol. So imagine the don't tread on me flag as Jesus comes by and they're waving it and they're shouting, not little kids just singing, Hosanna, Hosanna, but you hear grown men and women chanting, liberate us, liberate us, liberate us. That's what they're saying. That's what they're yelling. They're not saying, here comes Jesus and he's going to be our king and everything's happy now. They're shouting, set us free, liberate us. And they're not saying, set me free from my sin, set me free from my hold-ups and my addictions. They're saying, liberate us from the Romans. We want to be free. That's what they're shouting. And so Jesus is riding on a donkey, entering into Jerusalem. And he's on a road that essentially forks. And as the road forks, if he goes to the left, he can go up to where there is a Roman encampment. That's where the people are calling for him to go. This is our moment. This is what we've waited for. The reason we're here is because only days before, Jesus has made a man named Lazarus, who's been dead for days, walk out of the tomb. And the people finally get it. He's our God. This is what we've waited for. This is our chance. And so suddenly, they see it. Here he comes. Let's do this. We've been waiting. We've been waiting for this moment. Jesus, go up the hill, and we're going to start a revolution. We're going to kill every Roman in that encampment. We're going to begin a war. And it's not just a group of us who believe this. We have a warrior general Messiah who's come to set us free. And that's what they believe. And so as they come into Jerusalem on this road and they're chanting and shouting and yelling, liberate us, liberate us, liberate us, Jesus can go to the left but doesn't and veers to the right and down to Jerusalem. And he steals their thunder. And he robs them of this great moment that was about to shift the power and the control over Jerusalem, shift the power and the control over the nation, over these people. We were going to be free. This was our moment. And he left. You know know what he does when he gets to Jerusalem? He goes down to the temple. And as Jesus enters the temple, he begins to flip over tables. And he grabs a rope and he makes it like a whip, and he starts to whip the money changers who were in the table, in the temple. And he runs them out of the temple and says, "You've turned my father's house into a den of thieves." They were waiting for him to go up the hill, waiting for him to go and fight the Romans, and instead he goes into Jerusalem, into the temple, and throws the religious people out. That's not what we thought you were going to do. That's not what the Messiah was going to do. And so it begins to deflate the picture of who he was, the picture of liberty for these people, the picture of the balance of power. It's all being stolen from them. Some still believe that he could be the Messiah. Some still think that's possible. But over the next couple of days, more and more people begin to say, "Forget him. He's not who we thought he was." So how do you, over a course of a few days, go from people saying he is King, Messiah, and Lord, to saying, leave him alone. Put him on the cross. I don't care. Let Barabbas go. He's nothing. We're beginning to see how that picture is painted. There's another part of the story that we also misinterpret. And that is the part of the story about a man named Judas Iscariot. Now, for those of you who have only seen Judas throughout your religious life as being the enemy and the worst of the disciples, and somehow he kind of sneaked through the screening process on his application, lied about who he was, Jesus saw it, right? And he's like, "Oh, I'll let this guy in because I got to have one bad one with all the good ones." It wasn't that at all. In fact, Judas Iscariot, his name, of course, people don't have these last names at that time. It represents where they're from. His name actually, Iscariot, is from the term Iskarot, which is a place near Jerusalem where the zealots live. His family were zealots. Judas himself was a zealot. Wait, but I thought Judas was a guy who didn't believe. No, he was a guy who believed very much. Now, when you read the story, go back and research and read how Judas interacts with Jesus. He's around a lot, and most of what he says is actually accurate from a religious perspective. He has problems with money being wasted on things it shouldn't be wasted on, in his opinion. Not because he's a bad person, because he's a very religious person. And where he clashes with Jesus over and over and over is when they cannot agree on what the real mission is. See, Judas, as a zealot, also believes the mission of the Messiah is to bring a war against the Romans. It's not. And so over and over and over they clash. Can't get along. It's not because Judas is terrible or bad. It's because he doesn't understand what God is doing. So we flash forward to the end of this week. Jesus has already lost a lot of his attention. A lot of the passion behind him is kind of dwindled away. And now we're getting to the garden. And Judas, it says, Satan comes and he puts this spirit over Judas that causes him to go out and begin this process of betraying Jesus. Have you ever questioned this story before? Have you ever wondered how it is that Judas goes out one night, has a deal with the Pharisees and the religious leaders to betray Jesus? He comes back. He leads Romans to him. He kisses Jesus on the cheek. Jesus is taken away.